What is going on, everybody? Hold My Helmet podcast. I'm your host, Will Reichling. We got my co-host, Dylan Boyle. How you been, Dylan? How is everything?
Good, man. I'm good. Been playing flag football, missing regular football, reminiscing.
We're going to keep putting out videos. You know, we got the draft coming up. Got a lot of content coming up. Keep supporting us. Thanks, guys. Here we go. So, Dylan, these kickoff rule changes. We're going to go by step what the rules are and our takes on what we feel about each step of the rule. So we'll go into the first. We'll get into the gist of it. You know, we'll take this really slow because this can be very confusing to some people. I think this is similar to the XFL rules. Now they're combined with the USFL into the UFL. So let's get into it. Look, the kickoff rate, lowest kickoff return rate in NFL history last season in 2023. 21.8% of kickbacks last season, Dylan, were touchbacks. 21.8% of kickoffs were touchbacks.
Yeah, well, that was half the reason because they don't want their guys to get injured.
1,970 touchbacks. 1,970. Wow. Nearly 2,000 dead plays. Who wants to see that? Who wants to see that? I don't. So these are the new rules. Let's get into it. The kicking team will kick off from its own 35. So that stays the same. The kicking team will kick off from its own 35. Now this is where it starts to get interesting. 10 members of the kicking team will line up on the receiving team's 40-yard line. A minimum of 9 members, so usually 9 or 10, members of the receiving team will line up between the 30 and the 35. So now you got basically both lines of defense, the lines of offense and the lines of defense, within 5 yards of each other. So the huge part about this is the play begins when the ball is either caught or hits the ground in the landing zone or is returned from the end zone. So the landing zone is going to be between the receiving team's 20 and goal line. This is huge. Why? Because you know, a running start, usually the kicking team gets a running start and goes down like starts suplexing people. Okay, they limited a lot of that. They had a lot of touchbacks and everything like that. Even when there's touchbacks, the kicking team is still running 30, 40 yards down the field and laying people out before the touchback even happens. So half the play is already happening. So it kind of defeated the purpose. So now you're kind of eliminating that. You only get a 10-yard head start pretty much. They're pretty much right next to each other. So that kind of makes it interesting as it is. So what do you think about that first rule?
Well, I like it. There's some parts that I don't like, but so far I do like, you know.
Yeah, we'll get into the rest of it, but yes, they're going to be within 5 to 10 yards apart from each other, both lines.
Yeah, so you don't have people running at each other full speed, you know, like Sparta, you know.
Yeah, exactly. The damage was already done, even on the touchbacks, because the kicking team was running all the way down the field, laying people out, and then, touchback. So it's basically pointless. Yeah. You're hurting people for no reason.
I remember when I was playing league football, we were going up against a team that was so much better than us, and the guy next to me, he runs full on with the other guy and completely breaks his arm. It's just an accident waiting to happen.
And think about it, people are getting hurt, and then it's a touchback anyway. It's a dead play. People are getting injured on dead plays most of the time. So it's just like
what's the point? Yeah, so I can see why they did that. Taking it from the other league, the UF. What is it?
The XFL.
The XFL.
Well, now it's the UFL, so I think that it's combined now. But okay, so let's move on to the next step of the rule. Any kick that hits the landing zone must be returned. So from the 20 to the goal line, if it lands in there, it needs to be returned, 100%, no doubt. Any kick that bounces from the landing zone into the end zone must either be returned or downed by the receiving team to receive the ball at the 20. I like this because, on touchbacks, it was down at the 25 last season. Now, if it bounces in the landing zone and hits the end zone, you have to either return or take it at the 20. So this is going to force teams to consider returning that ball.
Yeah, there's no more fair catch within the 25.
Yeah, no more fair catch, exactly. No more fair catch within the 25. Forgot to mention that. It's a good point. So now when that ball rolls into the end zone from the landing zone, the returner is going to really consider returning it because if you need that ball, now you're only getting it at the 20, not the 25. So that adds a little bit of spice, a little bit more flair. So I like that. So let's get into the next one. If the kick fails to reach the 20-yard line, the receiving team gets the ball at the 40. That's really interesting because if they don't even reach the 20, boom, now you're screwed.
It's like if it goes out of bounds.
Pretty much.
Same difference.
Yeah, so same thing. If the ball goes out of bounds, the receiving team gets the ball at the 40. So same thing, yeah. So those two rules and this one's huge too. If the ball enters the end zone in the air, so not rolling from the landing zone to the end zone, if it enters the end zone in the air, the receiving team can either return it or down it to receive a touchback at the 30. So now, at that case, you would down it because now receiving at the 30 is a lot different than receiving at the 20. So really, I like this a lot because with these rules, the best interest of the kicking team is kicking it to the landing zone. Because if you don't kick it to the landing zone, If you kick it before the landing zone, it could possibly end up at the 40.
At the 40,
If you kick it into the end zone, it ends up at the 30. You don't want the ball to start at the 30 or the 40. You really prefer for it to be from the 20 inward. But
they're really going to be going for them to kick it and return it.
In the landing zone, exactly.
Yes.
So, because think about it, the kicking team dictates what happens here. It all starts with the kicking team. Are you going to kick it in the landing zone, in the end zone, out of bounds?
30?
Yeah, so the kicking team basically dictates it. And if you're the kicking team, you don't want the receiving team starting at the 30 or the 40. You really want them starting from the 20 inward, but you definitely don't want them starting outside the 30. You want them from the 30 in. So you want to kick it to that landing zone. And if you kick it to the landing zone, the receiving team has to return it. They don't have a choice. So this forces kickoff returns.
Yeah.
I love this. It forces kickoff returns. It forces excitement back into the game. And it forces big plays.
Yeah, it all makes sense. And, just the way that they went about it, I love it. I love this part. The one thing I'm not crazy about is the onside kicks, but
yeah, so we'll get into that too. Onside kicks are permitted only in the fourth quarter. You have to declare it when you make an onside kick. You just say, "Hey, we're doing an onside kick now," and you can only declare 2 onside kicks in that fourth quarter. So it kind of limits the onside kick, makes it a little even less exciting than it already was.
Yeah, that's just the one thing that kind of throws me off. Like, why they're basically getting rid of the onside kick at that point.
Pretty much.
You might as well just say, "Hey, let's just take it away completely."
And it's staying with the newer rules, right? Not with the older rules where they stack one side. I'm pretty sure it's still with the new rules of like both sides have to be even. Yeah, that's basically, you might as well just do that was the whole point of doing like the 4th and 15 at the 30. Why don't you take that XFL rule too? That would have been pretty interesting.
And just the fact that you have to declare it in the fourth quarter, and you could only do it in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so there's no more surprise onside kicks. Like Sean Payton Saints after halftime in the Super Bowl, that's not happening anymore.
Yeah.
That's not happening anymore.
Not crazy about that, but I don't see any other way you can go about it, just the fact that they're lining up at the receivers 30.
So, I mean, other than that, I just completely love this because you're forcing more action into the game. When I was a kid, my favorite plays in the NFL were those kickoff return touchdowns. I wanted to be a kick returner growing up. Like, I thought that was the coolest thing, to be able to take a kick 109 yards back the other way. That was the coolest thing to me. Now, it's probably not going to be 109 yards anymore. It would be 99 because if you take it from the end zone, you're probably going to need it because you get the ball at the 30. Mm-hmm. So 99-yard touchdown, that's probably going to be the funnest play still. And think about it. Now, it only has to be a minimum of 9 guys from the 30 to 35 for the receiving team. So you could have two guys
in the back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can see some trick plays happening, Dylan. Or, say this. Say it's the end of the game. You have a kickoff, like 2 minutes left. Why am I not putting Deebo Samuel back there? Why am I not putting Saquon Barkley back there? Like Jamar Chase. Like,
so squib kicks are really out of the question.
That's done too. Yes, 100%.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so that's actually a great point. End of the game. You don't want them to return for a touchdown. You do a little squib
have
kick.
to.
You can't.
At that point, that they are going to take it at the 40.
That made me love it even more because you're forcing action. You want to force action in this league. And like I said, like name another guy that's like an elite guy with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is now. We could potentially see Tyreek Hill in kick return situations now because these kick returns are forced. And there's going to be less injuries because there's not people flying 50 yards down the field. Yeah. So it's not as much of a risk anymore as it is. These plays are going to be forced to happen. So why wouldn't you want your most important player back there and one of the most important plays of the game? So this really makes for a lot of potential, Dylan. A lot of potential.
Yeah, I the more we talk about, the more I kind of like it.
There's so many possibilities here. I think it's just like people are gonna hate on it because it's different, like all the old school guys and everything. But we're way past the old school, dude. All the kickoff has been boring. 1,970 touchbacks. I'm not gonna say it anymore. 21.8% of kickoffs last season were touchbacks. I don't want to see any more touchbacks.
Yeah, I mean at that point, what they did last year was kind of ferocious. Like I don't even want to see that again.
I bet you
might as well take it away at that point.
Okay, so 1,970 touchbacks. I bet you. Less than, I could say confidently less than 500 next year will be touchbacks. Less than 500. Because think about it, the kicking team it's in their best interest to kick into the landing zone. Mm-hmm. So why would they not? So it's going to be either by mistake that they don't kick in the landing zone or by some concocted way of like reverse psychology. I can't even come up with a way right now that they wouldn't kick it into the landing zone, right? Like, is there something we're missing here? Like,
I mean, if it's like the end of the game, you don't want them to take a big run back.
You don't want to take the ball at the 40 either. You missed that landing zone.
I mean, you kick it right into the back of the end zone. They take it at the 30.
And you take it at the 30.
If they're really trying to play it safe at that point.
Yeah, you really don't want, like, 30 is a decent starting position, but, like, not detrimental. So I I agree with that. That's probably the situation. Like, say you put a Tyreek Hill back there. You're like, screw this. I'm kicking it out the end zone.
Exactly.
So that's a good point there. So I think we really covered every aspect we could with that. I mean,
it's going to be interesting.
Definitely.
I'm excited to see it. It's a 1-year trial, so they're going to renew it next year if everything works out. But yeah, it should be exciting. It's definitely going to make the game a lot more interesting. It's going to change up the way that they think about running the game, running the clock.
Strategy, like it's all chess. And now your game of chess is like slightly like changed a little bit. Now these coaches are gonna. I think now they have a full offseason to really get used to this, and I think we're gonna see some interesting things from like an Andy Reid, Mike McDaniel, these creative guys, Kyle Shanahan. Like I could really see Debo or like Tyreek Hill lining up back there.
And there's no more kicking it higher, giving it time for the guys to get back.
They cannot.
It
start
doesn't matter. As soon as they get the ball, that's when it starts.
Yeah, I did mention that, but I want to emphasize it again. The play does not begin until the ball either is caught or hits the ground, the landing zone, or is returned from the end zone. So they cannot move until one of those three things happen.
I'm just trying to think. Is there any sort of like way they can?
No, I don't know.
Try to like kick it like in the corner, but that's just way too risky. It might go out of bounds. So everything has to be straightforward.
Okay, let's play that scenario out. You kick it in the corner. If it still misses and goes outside of bounds, it's at the 40. If it goes into the end zone and then goes out of the end zone, I'm pretty sure that means it's at the 30, right?
Yeah. So ideally, they're just going to want to give it to the guy like right at like the 1 yard line. That's the ideal situation.
Actually, no. If it hits the landing zone and then rolls all the way out, it would be down to 20. So maybe you try to pin it in the corner where you hit the corner and then roll out the back of the end zone.
Or just the way they kick it, try to kick it, or
like
coming back.
where it hits the landing zone.
Like how they do it on punts,
Right. Where it hits the landing zone and kind of just like takes a bounce into because
that's probably a lot harder to do on a kickoff.
On like you gotta launch it like it's a 50-yard kick, like you're kicking it pretty far, so to place it like that.
So ideally they don't want it to roll into the end zone.
Well, you do if it hits the landing zone. You want to roll back there because it's down at the 20. As long as it hits the landing zone,
isn't it down at the 30?
No, if it goes straight out. If it hits the landing zone and then rolls back, it would be down to 20. So you want to hit the landing zone. Exactly. So maybe you try to pin it in the corner where the guy can't catch it and hope it rolls back. Too much risk there, though, because it can roll out.
I'm sure they're going to be doing a lot of practice, and a lot of teams are going to be strategizing and how to work this.
It's funny
rule.
because we're still like a little confused because it is very like it's not something that's going to be easily understood right away. Like it took me a couple times to read the rules fully to actually understand. Like even I was questioning. Wait, like. You don't want it to roll out, but you do if it hits the landing zone. You want to hit the landing zone first.
Well, I hope the 49ers go over all these rules because they have a problem with getting their rules straight.
Yeah.
The 49ers halftime situation.
That was funny. But speaking of rules that are pretty controversial, this one I just can't get by, Dylan. I can't. The hip drop tackles. What's your initial thoughts on that? They banned hip drop tackles. What do you think?
I mean, initial thought, I'm like, that's a good idea, but at the same time, like, it comes from, they want to see like these players be safer. They don't want to see as many injuries.
Right.
At that point, they should just go all grass. I feel like that's what most of the injuries are coming from. But it really depends on how they call these plays. Like, if it's like you get like one or two of these in every game, I feel like they're overdoing it.
You're right. We kind of do have to see how it gets called when it's actually in the game. But like for me, like I watch football. I've played football my majority of my life. I watched football basically since I was a kid. For me, when I first heard this last season, like halfway through last season, like, the hip drop tackles is really controversial. It might get banned. I was like, what's a hip drop tackle? Like the fact that I was like, what is a hip drop tackle? And when I saw it live in action, like when I looked it up, it looked like a regular tackle to me. So I'm just going to explain the definition on NFL.com of a hip tackle. A hip drop tackle occurs when a defender wraps up a ball carrier, rotates or swivels his hips, unweighting himself and dropping onto ball carrier's legs during the tackle. We're getting too technical here, guys. These people are trying to bring down the guy on the offense, no matter what it takes. They're going full speed. When we're talking about head hits, I understand. Even though that's hard to control too. When you're running full speed at someone, it's hard to like angle where it's split second, dude. You're trying to bring these guys down. This is your job. You're making millions of dollars to win this football game. And to win this football game, you gotta bring this guy down. Even if think about it, when they're chasing these guys from behind, like they gotta like run and grab these guys. And like sometimes these hip drop tackles are inevitable. So this is kind of bullshit to me. I get it. I get what the NFL's doing because they're trying to cover their ass before they get another lawsuit. Like the head injuries. They're being preventative instead of what's the word? They're being proactive instead of reactive. You know what I mean? They're trying to prevent this before it becomes an issue. But I don't agree with this one, and maybe they will backtrack on this in a few years.
Yeah, like I said, it really depends on how they call it. If they call it like, you know how you can't put pressure, you can't put weight on the quarterback.
Yes.
You have to, if it's kind of like that, I kind of understand it. Like, it's a judgment call. But like, I feel like it could be really intentional to fall onto somebody, and I feel like there's a good way of going about it where you can still tackle them, but just swing out the way and not land on their legs.
It's becoming so hard for defenders. They changed a lot of rules over the middle. Like you can't like hit defenseless receivers over the middle. Like no one on the football field is defenseless. It's just kind of weird. They have a lot of rules that kind of caters to the offense, caters to the quarterback, caters to the wide receivers, and it's becoming harder and harder for a defender to play defense. And I think that's what they're going for. They want high scoring games. They want great quarterback play. But we're getting a little too technical here. I think they were just trying to be trying to solve something before it becomes a bigger issue. But I don't think this was that big of an issue as people were leading on to be. So I think this is a little bit of an overreaction by the NFL.
I agree with that, but at the same time, it really depends on how they call it. If it's one of those things where you only see it once in a blue moon, okay, fine.
I agree, but it's going to be something that's going to just, I guess it's going to be, I hope it's the way that you're describing it, where it's really just an egregious thing where you're really trying to be obnoxious and hold your weight on someone. I hope they're just trying to do it for obnoxious tackles. That would be a different story. I would get behind that. But
I mean, if anything, they should do something about the turf fields. I feel like that's the bigger issue.
I agree.
A lot of people are getting a lot more injury. There's how many grass fields are there now?
Not that many left, but I think there's still a good amount, like 6 or 7. There's still a decent amount. I know Pittsburgh's one of them.
Yeah,
there's still some.
Statistically, I feel like it's just you see a lot more injuries on turf fields. Like MetLife Stadium is injury central.
Dude, players hate that place, man.
Yeah.
Players hate MetLife. The Niners players always shit on MetLife. It's like. It makes me feel bad sometimes.
Yeah,
it's
like the Giants' O-line has been going through cycles of
so
players.
the Jets. Think about that for a second. If we looked up the two most injured offensive lines the last couple of years, it's probably the Giants and the Jets.
It's
maybe
so
there's
unfair.
A correlation there. Maybe we should look more into that and come up with an episode.
I gotta go test that field for myself.
Honestly, maybe we should make an episode on our own about just like turf fields and first grass fields. That's something interesting that probably people would like to hear about.
For sure, I gotta look into the stats and really see the
exactly,
numbers.
and the injuries on what fields it happened. Not for nothing though, but personal experience, I always felt more comfortable cutting on grass fields. I've played on both because
I feel like you stick more.
Yes.
So your legs tend to go stick in the grass.
And I feel like turf fields, turf fields are always inconsistent. Like one's very shallow with the turf bedding, and one is like very deep. And like you can never find that right one. The ones that are deep, you kind of sink in and you still hurt your ankle. Yeah. The ones that are shallow, you kind of
slide across.
Yeah. So it's like it's a fine balance, man. But like then again, should we just be wearing turf shoes and not cleats? So I don't know. But you always got to prepare for if you're playing grass though. So that's why I always have the cleats out there, man. But. Yeah, I don't know. That's still a topic that's, is very controversial and still being debated. It's just like the turf is just way easier to maintain than grass. So it's like once they switched over, it's like hard for them to switch back now. Because
it makes sense.
And think about all the high schools and everything that have the turf fields and stuff. Are they just going to rip them out now? Say the NFL went back to grass. I guarantee you all the high schools and everything are going to keep, unless they're flooded with money. But most common high school, it's got its money. But there's funding, there's cuts.
It's probably going to be converting the other way. Like the nicer schools are going to start going to grass.
Yeah, really nice grass, but then the poorer place are going to keep the turf.
You got to think about it too. Like a lot of these stadiums, they cater to other sports, so they usually take out, know how they roll it in and out. So that might be a hassle with the grass.
Well, that's interesting because the Raiders have the grass, but they roll the grass in and out. I don't think that's turf though. I think that's actual grass. Really? Yeah, I think they're actually curing grass or something. But
interesting.
A lot of the nowadays you don't have a lot of mix and match with the teams in the stadiums anymore as you used to. I mean, you got your Jets and Giants, that's the same sport. But you don't have your Mets and Jets in Shea Stadium anymore, or the A's and Raiders playing in the same stadium. You have separated fields. Most of the time the fields are used for concerts instead. So it's the owners like to generate that money using the concerts and everything.
Yeah, for sure.
But then you get the soccer teams playing on there once in a while too. And then we always yell about them because we hate soccer. But
isn't the World isn't the World Cup coming here?
Is it coming to MetLife though, or where? I think it's playing in MetLife.
Yeah, it is.
People from the world are really gonna hate that.
Yeah.
Jersey, dude. Let me tell you about MetLife. It's in a swamp. The stadium in East Rutherford, MetLife. It's in a swamp. It's right up the highway. It's not that far from the city, so I don't want to hear Buffalo Bills fans saying we're the only New York team because they're closer to Canada than New York City. Okay, I always get mad when they bring that up. I know we're kind of sidetracking here, but hey, there's not much to talk about anyway. So, anyway, what do you think about the Buffalo Bills? No, I'm just messing with you. I'm messing with you.
Screw them.
Let's move on to the next thing. Okay, coaches actually get a third challenge if they win one of the first two challenges. It used to be they had to win both to get their third. They used to have to win both two challenges to get a third challenge. Now they only have to win one. So it gives more of a chance for the coaches to, correct things. I like that too. So not much to get into there. We both like that. This one I think is huge. NFL penalties for roughing the passer and intentional grounding that were previously considered judgment calls for officials would be subject to replay challenges for the upcoming season. So the replay assistant they're talking about. I don't know if they're talking about challenge.
Yeah, I don't know if it's.
I think it's reviewable. It's reviewable now. Yes.
But how does it get reviewed?
Well, such calls subject to review by a replay assistant must still be within objective parameters. They call it. For instance, whether a quarterback was hit in the head on a roughing call, or if a quarterback was out of the pocket for a throw on an intentional grounding penalty. Yeah. So there's specific instances where it has to be reviewed. It can't just be a general thing.
So it's like one of those things where they have somebody in the booth
and they stop the play.
Watching for the quarterback to see if, he got hurt or if players getting hurt.
Right. I think
same instance.
Yeah, and they stop the play and then they review. You know how sometimes they stop the play and the booth will review it? I think it's one of those. I don't think you could challenge it. That would be a little crazy. You can't even challenge PI. But I like that.
That was a rule for like 1 year.
And I wasn't crazy about that anyway, but this is huge because there's so many, I've seen so many bad roughing the passer calls over the years where games have kind of gotten ruined from it. You could probably remember a couple instances.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I remember one, I was at a Jets game 2 years ago, Jets-Patriots, and John Franklin Myers is a pretty, famous recent one. John Franklin Myers hit Mac Jones on kind of a late hit, but, I thought it was kind of bullshit. It was a little high, but, and what was his name? Michael Carter. Pick 6 to the house. Got called back on roughing the passer.
Oh my god!
I was in the bathroom though, so I was just like, "Roar!" and all of a sudden I heard it die down, and everyone was pissed.
Well, dude, I could name an endless amount of times that Patrick Mahomes got a roughing the passer when.
Usually it goes to the star quarterback. Yes. You get Brady always got the benefit of the doubt. They don't want their guys getting hurt. A lot of these roughing the passer calls were based on the Rodgers injury where the guy's weight landed on him. Mm-hmm. It wasn't on purpose, but that's when it kind of started to get even stricter.
So is that going to be reviewable too?
That's that. I don't know the specifics. They said it has to be within objective parameters, and the instance they gave here was the quarterback getting hit in the head on a roughing call. I don't think they said that.
In all honesty, if they have some BS call, I'm sure somebody okay, it's under review. I really think it might be. They might review everything quarterback related.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like.
Well, is it going to go in the favor of the quarterback or in favor of the right call? That's the question.
Favor of the right call.
I
hope so.
Yeah, I think so, and I think this is.
I hope it's that way.
Why does it take so long for these things to change, though? It's when sometimes you see these rules and you think, shouldn't this have already been a thing?
Right? It's the NFL's been around for 40, 50 years now.
Yeah, and you can't review bad roughing the passer calls. It's kind of
yeah, it's crazy how they're still coming up rules.
But
50 years later,
I will say this. Over the NBA and the MLB, they jump on stuff quicker. Well, they realize when something's wrong / right, and they either double down on the right or jump off the wrong a lot quicker than the other sports do. And that's why they keep making the money, man. They're really pushing away from the other sports now. It's not even close. When I was a kid, baseball was the most popular sport. Football was getting up there, but it was a strong number 2, but it was still baseball. Football is blown away. Then, let me get a couple of years later. Then football became the most popular, and the NBA was starting to come up.
You know why that is, right?
Football is blown away from all.
You know why that is, right?
Betting.
Taylor Swift.
It was before that. I think gambling has a part to do with that.
Yeah,
I think one game a week plays a huge role in that. Dude, baseball, I'm watching the Mets every night.
It's a lot more intense, yeah. A lot more anticipation.
The NFL finds a way to make every game count, even for the worst teams. Every game matters. The MLB, dude, this is the dog days of the MLB right now. They have 162 games. They lose 3 in a row. Their season's not over. The Jets lose 3 in a row. Their season's over. You know what I mean?
There's a lot more famous people in the NFL in general, so it's just more interesting people to stay attracted to.
Exactly. I bet you can't name one guy in the MLB right now.
I was about to say that. Yeah, no.
I can because I'm a
Jones?
Aaron Judge.
Oh, Judge.
Aaron Judge. He's the best player too, and he said Aaron Jones. He was a football player. That's why.
Yeah, that's why.
Anyway,
that's why we stick to NFL.
NFL is king, man. That's for sure. Let's move on to the last topic. Look, Rashee Rice. Weird situation here. There's a multi-vehicle accident involving the car registered or leased to Rashee Rice. The car fled the scene. Apparently, Rice is cooperating with police.
He is.
Do you think this is sketchy?
A little bit. Just the fact that
apparently
they
in
also
college,
said he was the only one that's allowed to be driving the car. So either way, you're letting somebody else drive your car, or you're driving the car and fleeing the scene. Something's not right here.
He's definitely dropped.
I mean, yes, he's in all seriousness, if you get into an accident like that, you're fleeing the scene if you're drunk.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought of. He was on something. Like, Flea. Well, he probably was also going Henry Ruggs type fast, but
yeah, I've gotten a lot of comparisons about that.
I gotta be honest though, when you're in that situation, it's like that's the only way you get out of it, man. Because we're just completely flee the scene. So he probably, I don't know. If that's the case,
if he was under the influence.
If that's the case, he's one lucky bastard. Because anyone else that wasn't in his situation probably would not be. It doesn't sound like.
He say, she say, like...
Well, it becomes that because he fled the scene.
Exactly.
Now.
So he could just... I mean, the worst case scenario, he says somebody else was driving my car. Okay, who was it? And then you're throwing somebody else under the bus.
But can he still possibly be legally responsible since he was the only one allowed to drive it?
Yes, because he was the only one that legally was able to drive it. So he's definitely going to have a lawsuit on his hand.
And didn't we hear something about that he wasn't the cleanest whistle in college either?
Yeah.
So this makes it...
Coming into the draft, a lot of people were worried about that.
And I think that's why he fell to the second round, actually. I think that's one of the reasons he fell is because of his personal reasons. So this is something.
And this is his first year in the NFL.
This is something big to look out for, though. But let's be honest, though. He has shown that he is a winning player. They won a Super Bowl with him. He was a big factor. Mm-hmm. He's young. He needs to mature. This stuff happens.
Yeah, but look, the one receiver for the Chiefs, and this happens to him, the best one you have, that's unfortunate.
Hollywood's going to save the day. I like Hollywood Brown, but
he's getting up there, though.
He's an age, and Rashee Rice is coming into form as a number one receiver, so I hope everything's all right with him.
Yeah, hopefully this isn't a recurring thing for him.
I hope not. But all right, that's it, guys. More draft stuff coming up, more, off season, maybe there'll be some cool trades going on. I don't know. We'll just see who gets drafted. I think we know Caleb's going number one.
Yeah, there's news happening every day.
Yeah, so we'll just keep it going. We'll keep you updated. We'll keep putting out content, and you better keep liking.
Yes,
Thanks, Dylan. See you guys soon. Thanks.